families are passing through difficult times as the cost of staple food is increasingly becoming unbearable. Findings at various markets across the country show that prices of rice, beans, garri, flour and sugar, among others, are rising almost on a weekly basis. While breadwinners are seeking government help, traders are lamenting that the inflation rate is fast eroding their capital base. Now, the latest inflation figure was 24.08% in July 2023, the highest since September 2005. A March report by the Food and Agricultural Organization, FAO, shows that nearly 25 million Nigerians were at risk of hunger between June and August unless urgent actions are taken. FAO identified continued conflict, climate change, inflation, and rising food prices as key drivers of the trend. It said of the 17 million people who are currently food insecure, 3 million are in the northeast, Borno, Adamawa, and Yobe State. Market intelligence indicates that food prices for a period of 6 months, that is between February and July 2023, have hit rooftops. Available records show that by mid-February to the end of July, prices of maize, beans, and rice from 3 grain markets of Dawano, Dandume, and Kumo in Kano, Katsina, and Gombe State, as well as Abuja, had on average doubled, especially maize, while beans and rice added between 10,000 and 20,000 naira respectively. Now, according to Prices Index, the prices of the items kept soaring unabated almost every week to the current staggering level. Now, to discuss inflation and food crisis, in the studio is the president of the Maize Association of Nigeria, MAAN, Dr. Bello Abubakar, and Paul Alaje, senior economist at SPM Professionals. Gentlemen, welcome to the program. So, first of all, Mr. Paul, I would like to start with you, Doctor, rather. So, I would like you to walk us through, because although I know that there are many factors that has led us to this position, but I would like you to start from May 29 till date. So, that is subsidy is gone.
Well, thank you so very much for having me. What a privilege to be here again. Recall that when President Tinubu got to office, whether it was properly briefed or not, he has announced the removal of subsidy. Now, subsidy is one of the things that affects our livelihood as a people, not because all of us can buy a car, but because we have to move. There is what the concept of mobility of labor. If we are all at home under lock and key, recall that during COVID, President Buhari, because he wants many people to be alive, he doesn't want people to die, he has to join the rest of the world by announcing the lockdown. So when he announced the lockdown, everybody was at home. So mobility of labor was completely immobilized. We could not move again because our lives matters first. We are more important than any economic good. So at that time, you could see what happens to prices. Prices were crashing. A lot of things were going on, apart from those that could run businesses online. So when the president announced this, you could see the resultant effect in Lagos as more people trek than those that want to even use their vehicles. So this has a lot of implication. Less than 1 month after that time, FX was taken to floating. That is, there was flotation of Naira. What the implication means in Economist, technically speaking, is either you are revaluing your money or you are devaluing it. Naira got devalued at official window from 461 now to worse than 700. At the parallel market, it moved from about 600 now to worse than 900. No more economic hardship. There have been no time where two policies to drive inflation we combat. This time, we are saying that government is saying Naira, which represents Mr. Macaroni. I don't know if our viewers know that popular comedian, is to combat in a boxing game with Anthony Joshua, that British America. Who do you think will win? How can Nigeria float currency and believe that you will gain value? You know, if you are contesting with the rest of the world, what do we export apart from crude, sesame and seed, and a few other things? But virtually over 80% of our consumption are imported. Now you have unique challenges because those two policies have major impact on inflation. And if you can check, in the last 1 year, we have never seen inflation drop the number. This time, it dropped 23%. We moved from 22.79 to 24%. That is huge within a month. It is so huge. It is because two policies were enacted, and it wasn't as though in last year inflation was better off. Even last year, July, it was high inflation that we were commenting that government needs to do something. It was a time where political parties have just been planning or started their primaries of some sort. So people were thinking because money was circulating, the inflation was high. So no, it could not beat our minds that of a cocoa house building, 25-story building, inflation had climbed to 24th floor. Looking at the pinnacle of the building, and when it gets to 25th floor, what it means that your 200,000 naira salary by 1st of January, within 4 years, will not be able to buy anything, literally speaking. It will not buy anything. So what happens to maize seller? What happens to rice seller? What happens to all food seller? Because they live in the same economy. Even if you plant maize in your house and you don't use dollar to plant it, but you will use the resources to buy clothes, to buy food, to pay school fees. All of those things have increased. You only have one option: to increase the price of your maize. Let alone what is happening to insecurity, especially around the northern Nigeria and the southeast Nigeria. And you know that when farmers don't go to farm and to harvest, how do we expect? And the logistic challenges. We have fundamental issues which are called institutional challenges that we must solve. Monetary solution, you know, will not solve our problem. We talk about inflation. Government is thinking if we run flotation, there will be investors come to Nigeria. I'm still looking for those investors, by the way, because when you check the stock, rather than the value grow, the value is actually decreasing. This is because the real solution to our problem have not been tackled. And I hope that perhaps if policymakers are listening to this program, they will look at how do we solve the real problem beyond temporarily, I beg your pardon, monetary solutions.
All right, okay, so let me take this one. I want to ask a quick question to Dr. Bello Abubakar. So, Doctor, you know, domestic food prices have increased, you know, and it's like the first of its kind, just like mentioned earlier, since from 2005. And we've had when President Bola Ahmed Tinubu called emergency, you know, on food security. And also we've seen the prices rise of different cereal, you know, from maize to rice to even tubers, you know, tubers of yam, where you can buy one tuber of yam for as much as 2,000. So these problems have been eating us deep, and people are crying hard because it's biting hard. What's your take on it as someone who is familiar with the agricultural sector?
Well, once again, good morning. If you look at the issue of the food crisis generally in Nigeria, I can say that it is a global issue. Let me take it from the beginning, because the issue of food crisis is not only in Nigeria, as how I have said, it's a global issue. Because even from the FAO, there was a report that some countries will be affected with the hunger between according to their report, it seems from February to July to August this year. Why? Because there is a factors that constituted this crisis right from the Ukraine and Russia war. As we are all aware that most of these food items or food commodities are coming from these two countries, or the resources, the raw materials that is generating to get the food is coming from these two countries, Russia and Ukraine. Because if you take the issue of fertilizer, which is a major component in providing food in everywhere in the world, that one, there was no way to get it since from the inception of this war. And also, if you look at the issue of the insecurity, also constituted to this lack of availability or sufficient food in Nigeria, also that one contributed. Also, if you go back to the issue of production, our production actually from 2015 to 2020-21, it has increased and it was improved because of there is some other interventions that and as in support to the farmers. So whatever it is, that those farmers, they have contributed a lot in providing sufficient food in Nigeria. But from last year to date, actually there is a very low production of food items in Nigeria. That is why now, despite from the issue of the dollar that raised, and also the inavailability of inputs to produce, so that one also contributed a lot. That is why now there is no enough food in this country. So whenever there is a high demand and there is no production, the prices must raise. There must be an inflation of the prices in any type of food crops. Especially if you look at our own side, that is the maize production. As at last year, the price of the maize is not more than 25,000. That was early last year. But after the production of 2022, because there is no enough production, that is why you can see that we are facing these problems in Nigeria.
All right. So, Dr. Paul, you mentioned something earlier, and I know it struck the minds of our viewers. It also struck my mind too. I'm talking about the 200,000 naira salary, 25% inflation rate, and how 200,000 might not be able to get much, in the coming years. So the question now is, what is the hope of the common Nigerian? Because it is now seeming like someone tries to earn more, or at least try to climb the ladder, and then some way, somehow, the cost of living pulls the rug from under him. So what's the hope here? Because at the end of the day, Dr. Abubakar here talked about how production has reduced, inflation is going up, there's the issue of insecurity, and then the ordinary Nigerian has to bear the brunt of all of this. Is there any way out for this average Nigerian?
Well, there is way out. I strongly believe there is way out. I don't think our situation is hopeless. After all, the mantra of the current government is renewed hope. So, I don't believe that we are hopeless, even though situation around us don't seem so. Here is it. By 11:59 p.m. today, 60,000 children will be welcomed to Nigeria, and the number would increase. The question is, can farmers guarantee increased food production between today and tomorrow for extra 60,000 people? The answer is no. That's where they have the challenge. So our real challenge is supply side. As economists, a professional one, what we have kept telling government, from President Obasanjo to President Yaradua, President Jonathan, and immediate past President Buhari, and we are communicating to President Bola Tinubu, is how do we wrap up with supply? How do we, and there are solutions. But you see, this solution will take a lot of efforts. It's going to start manifesting from the medium term. It's not going to start manifesting, but I can tell you within 2 years, you will start seeing results.
Can you share some of them?
Thank you. Plantations. What was the northern Nigeria known for? Before oil was discovered, it was known for granules. What was western Nigeria known for? Before oil was discovered, it was known for cocoa. What was eastern Nigeria known for? Palm oil. Now go to Plateau today. You see the best of Irish potato. Go to another part in the north central Nigeria, which is Kogi. You see what can give us cash crop, which is cashew nuts. Today, we all don't pay attention. We still have vast land between Abuja to Lokoja. I've done that by road often and often. And I wonder, do you mean the land to the right and the right, they all have CFO? Why can't government partner with the owner or use the Act, Land Use Act, to ensure that we turn some areas that we are sure we can provide security, and I mean military, to establish plantation, farm of some sort, where you can post core members to work and employ locals to also work. This will not just be the function of federal government, the 36 state government, the FCT, we have to contribute funds. We will not just give funds to farmers like we did under Anchor Borrowers program. President Obasanjo threw money to textile sector. Today, Kaduna textile mill is still moribund and a shadow of itself. What have we seen upon the billions that were given to rice farmer? The price of rice jumped within last month, 3,500 to 42,000 just within month. Does it mean the billions of naira given to farmer are disappear? The answer is, it is not only money that solves problem. Effort, processes, can also be used to solve problems. Yeah, money is important. I'm not by any means saying they should not give funds to farmers.
Because I was going to ask that we've seen that our government has a habit of throwing money at all of our problems. So I think if we're going to be talking about the issues and solving the problem, we should also talk about the ideology that these leaders have about solving the problem.
The ideology must also just grow beyond let's eat. It's the beginning, I agree. Let us produce what we eat. That is not the ideology in China. That is not the ideology in Germany. That is not the ideology in different parts of the world. For our effects to improve, for our quality of life to improve, we must say that let's produce what we eat and export. Because when you eat, you need to earn to do other things. Life is not by food alone. So our ideology must increase. You can see an individual farmer may have 10 hectares, 20 hectares, 100 hectares. I've not seen individuals that have 1,000 hectares. I've not seen. It doesn't mean they don't exist. But imagine if it's a plantation and it's a competition with just 100 local government to start. States, local government and federal working together. You will see bumper harvest. Now here is it. Government must guarantee output. That is, government must offtake whatever comes off and create bands where we can keep harvests, you know, from Benue to Sokoto to Taraba to Oyo to Ogun. We cannot urbanize all our everywhere in our country. Farmers must have a place, and this place must be guaranteed. That does not mean individual farmers, government should stop supporting them. No, but I'm saying let's now put structure to it such that we can predict our output. Once you predict your output and you are sure that you are going to have bumper harvest, what will happen to price? Price will crash. Price will crash. Whether it is beans, it is rice, it is sugarcane, whatever it is. If we can grow on the path of output, they to crash. To avoid waste, then we go into processing. Then you start seeing new level of processor. I'm a rice miller. I have a rice mill in this town. So, but if you start seeing improvement, significant improvement in output, then you see processor, you see miller, you see people that will convert, you see manufacturing, and that is the beginning of development for any country. Because the moment you are building your plantation, you are building your output, whether government gets involved or not. I'm not saying government should start planting for us. No, I'm saying government should create structure, program that current farmers will work in and guarantee security for those places, the logistics from where they are planting, where they are harvesting to the right area. And yes, fertilizer is very key. Without fertilizer, your output will be very low, or in some cases, you may not even get any. Government must guarantee those things because, first, the function of government is to protect life and property and provide welfare. And what is, if we all don't eat, our brain will not function well. It is the truth. So I am expecting that individuals will look at how do I be part of the problem to be solved? I mean, how do I be problem solver rather than being part of the problem to be solved in the reality of what we have found ourselves. And the truth is, this problem can be solved. We just need energy. We need to look in another direction rather than just saying, oh, we know we have power problem. Let's throw money at it and power will come. Government has spent billions of naira on electricity. Have we been able to see light as much as we expect?
No. Mr. Paul Alaje went deep on it. Okay, so Dr. Bello, referring to what Mr. Paul said about, throwing money, and my co-hand mentioned about throwing money, to a particular problem. So as the president of Maize Association of Nigeria, you're looking at these things from the forefront. So would you say that there is anything, apart from what Mr. Paul mentioned, that the government needs to do? And then what are the farmers expecting from the government? And what is also the plan of the farmers from their own end?
Well, what he said is true. And what the government is expected to do is to provide enabling environment for the farmers, not only to throw the money as how he said, though even the first program is not the money that was given to the farmers. It has inputs and the services that was provided to the farmers, which if you look at the first program for the first regime between 2015 to 2020 and 21, actually there was an increase in terms of food production. Because
sorry to interrupt you. I was just going to mention, because quite a number of documentary and reports were done by Trust TV and also the Daily Trust on the issue of food security. And during an interview, one of a key member of the value chain, the agricultural value chain, complained. He said the problem with the Anchor Borrowers program was that these inputs or this assistance or these services were provided to people he termed white-collar farmers. So in your response, I would like for you, to factor in how we could prevent these white-collar farmers from also coming again to benefit from a process that will be detrimental to all of us.
Okay, I will answer and I will explain more about that issue. All right. Going by what I'm saying, that it was an input that was provided to the farmers. And if you look at 2015 to 2020, actually there was an increase in terms of food security, because a typical example is that during COVID-19, there was a lockdown, total lockdown globally. And also our president closed the border for more than a year. But there was no food crisis, there was no inflation of food prices. There was enough food. We ate what we grow. And then if you look at that time, the price of maize is not more than 15 to 18,000, which means that the support that was given to the farmers, actually it has worked and they have produced because they were supported. But if you come to 2020, 21, that support has stopped from the CBN. And then this is one of the factors that constituted to this problem, because those farmers that are being supported, they are the ones that are, especially the small scale holder farmers in Nigeria, they are about 60 to 70% that are providing our food in Nigeria. So because there was no that support, actually even that one contributed in terms of this food crisis in Nigeria. So coming to what the other person said, that maybe there is a white-collar farmers. Actually, it is something that if you don't know it, you don't know it. If you are not in the system, you will not understand it. This issue of Anchor Borrower program, before a farmer can get an access to the input, there is some certain stages and procedures and verification to make sure that really he is a farmer. Number one, he has to be registered right from his cluster head. Then his name with BBN with phone number will be sent to the bank, that is to the CBN branch office at the state level. Then from there, they will take it up to the CBN headquarters, where they are going to verify their BBN, whether there's any encumbrances or any default from the farmer. After that, then now they will send the service providers for mapping to go and take the coordinate of the farm. Any farmer that was given that input, they must go and take the coordinate of his farm before he was approved. So after that one, they will now bring it back. The one that they have verified that really that farm is there, then they will now put him in the list as a beneficiary. Then the inputs will now be supplied through the input suppliers, through the associations, CBN, and any other financial institution, because it is a tripartite agreement. The commodity association that are representing the farmers, the CBN that are providing the money, the PFI that are disbursing the money. So a farmer will collect his input in front of that three committee members. So you can see, if they said that there is a maybe
something going on
yes, or maybe political power, whoever they were verified before they were given the input. So after, they will now go and produce. But some of the farmers, it's not everybody that is 100% perfect. We know that some of them, they normally used to sell the product. They will not go to the farm. But those that buy the product from them, they are still going to the farm to produce. You can see it is just a value chain. If a farmer was given the input, whether he will go and use it to utilize it in his farm or not, even if he sell, anybody that buy the input, he will go to the farm. He will not go into put it in the water or to do something with it.
Doctor, but
so which means that
in that chain, sorry to interrupt you, in that chain, there was a story of some people were not really farmers, just like he mentioned. Some people would just go borrow someone's land and then show the process.
Use it for the
and they use, yes,
process.
for the verification process you mentioned. And then there are others that they are farmers and they did all the verification, they passed, but then they weren't given everything on the list that was promised. We have first-hand people, you know, with that review. Indeed. So what are the processes, you know, as someone from the agricultural sector, are you people putting in place for in case if the federal government are thinking of approaching, you know, the same issue with money? How do you people plan to solve it?
I can say that the program is just, when it started, it is just, up to now, it is just like a pilot system. And whatever you are doing or you have started doing it, you must be learning lessons from the challenges and other problems, so that you should know how to tackle or how to solve the problems for the future. So from our own end, we can say that we have learned so many lessons, and there is a need to restructure the whole value chain in this regard, because according to what we have learned from the farmers, from the banks, from the government, there is a need to come together to iron all the problems and to know how to solve it and move forward. From our own end, what we are doing now, we are taking the data of the farmers right from the beginning, right from the grass, from the end of the farmers. That all the data of the farmers will be generated under the consultant company that will now put it in the system, so that after collecting all the data, they are going to be stored in the system. Also to arrange on how the farmers will get the input, whether he's there in the physically or not, because it is something that will go through the system. All the inputs will be put in place. Whatever he will collect, the time that he will collect, so that to avoid these problems of whether farmer collect the input or he didn't collect. Whatever he collect, it will be there in the system. So that at the end, his farm was already captured.
All right, Doctor. Let me come to Dr. Paul now. You know, when the issue of food security is mentioned, Nigerians are quick, and rightly so, to mention, you know, the government. The government is not doing this, the government is not doing that. But they are forgetting that the private sector is also integral in ensuring, you know, economic stability. So in this case, what or how, rather, can the private sector come in, you know, to ensure food security? What role can they play?
Well, I think the sector needs to be more attractive than what we have now. The sector is not as attractive as we have it. Let me tell you this. If you save, or if you buy government bond of about 1 billion and it's going for 11%, that means you'll be seeing a return of about 110 million naira. If you go into agriculture or if you go into production, you might not see as much. So we need to make it more attractive. Even though if you go to agriculture and you were able to get loans, it's possible you get something from all of those. But if you come within the value chain, especially as a miller, you will not get beyond 5, 6, 7% returns. It's not possible for you to do that, except if there is compromise. So, but if I keep my money with the banks or I lend my money to government, I'm going to make so much money. Then why am I stressing myself in agriculture? It is not attractive to private sector. Private sector wants to produce good and make returns. Make profit. But you see, there are other things even that is being done within our system. There are no risk. How will government buy bond and not pay back? It's going to be a disaster. Ghana tried it. They bite their finger. Inflation is 40%. So you can't do it. So if you give so much in returns, and you also know that you cannot give so less, because check our Eurobond. 2 days ago, it was rejected. Nigeria Eurobond was rejected, which means how really viable are we to borrow money? The only way we can attract money is to further increase. But as you are increasing, you are also telling potential investor that this is where you should keep your money. That is why you see this nation need an holistic economic restructuring. We need to take a reverse gear and look at our activity. What do we really want? What do we want? When you check nations of the world, there are targets. For China is to make sure everybody in every household of the world, China is present, either as your plug or as your paper, or as India have adopted the same thing. What do we want to give the world as a nation? What is it that when people wake up in their homes, whether in Johannesburg or in New York or LA or in Berlin or in Paris or in the middle of nowhere in this world, something about Nigeria will appear to them? It is until that time. It's not just about agriculture. There are countries that don't even have arable land to plant, but they are living well. Our affordability is what we attract private sector to go into farming, because our land is arable, our land is good. 60% of our agricultural land are not even cultivated. They are kidnappers then somewhere. So government must come up with law to deliberately support agriculture. If not, you read the report, 25 million people are facing hunger, deprivation. 133 million people are living in multi-dimensional poverty. Let me add World Bank to it. 99 million people are living below poverty line. These are issues that we need to find solutions to. And the solution will not come through quick fixes. It must come by looking at the structure, looking at the problem, and tackling them headlong. I must add, in your, I think one of your first set of questions, you asked about what is driving and what can we do. I understand that there is a global scarcity as started with Putin attack on Ukraine. But if we have become independent of some sort, no matter what is going on in Ukraine, it will not have impact on us.
Doctor, I also want you to add to your response consumer behavior, because it's also important that we add how the behavior of consumers can also affect, the prices of commodities and the entire economy itself, for the sake of the audience.
Now, consumer behavior is key. Consumer has high taste for imported products, but what happened to rice? Today, Nigeria consumer of local rice. If I bring cables to you, you'll be looking for Nigerian wire and cable. You see, it is just an assumption that nothing good, Nigeria cannot produce anything good. It's not true. It is how we present it. If we want to produce standard, we will. And taste will change. It's a matter of time. It's a matter of time. There are things that Nigeria has done well, better than the rest of the world. I have bought cable that is not Nigerian, I bought cable that is Nigeria. And I can confirm to you that Nigerian cable is better than the other cable coming from another country. I don't want to mention the name. So it is you see, everything still boils down to us, either as manufacturer, as government, as private sector. We must decide what we want. And it will not just be everybody doing their own. You see, governance and development, they work hand in hand. When we are ready for development, we will achieve it. So Putin is fighting Ukraine. Ukraine is fighting Russia. Now Africa is suffering. And not just Nigeria. Ghana, Sierra Leone, everybody is suffering scarcity of grain. Because do we even plant wheat enough in Nigeria? But we eat bread a lot. But do you know that our land is so fertile for wheat production? But where is the energy? Where is the structure? Where is the program? Government must change. You see, we must have a coordinator. It's like riding a train that the head coach is missing. You know why they call the word training came from train? There must be something leading others to follow. So the head coach must be available of all the coaches. So here is it. We must draw programs. What runs country, especially developing country that is aspiring to become developed, are programs. We must run programs and support. Alaje is very experienced in farming. We bring him in. What is our target? When we gave funds, support, seedlings under Anchor's Borrower program, what was the target of that program? Was it that the target is that we want to double our current food output? What is the target? There must be a target. Imagine you are playing football and there is no goalpost. You are just exercising. So there must be a target that we want to multiply our food output. Anybody that is even ordering food will quickly start selling. So the moment the program starts, not so long, you start seeing reduction in price. Because you now see that there is a new energy, that the association of farmers or grain, different sectorial group are directly involved. And we are watching. And we are publishing the report. And this is the way the rest of the world can rely on us. And when they rely on us for product, even if you say our good is not standard, we tell you, come and put your standard before we export, so that I can get to your country safe and sound. So that is what I think we need to do as a nation.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So,
all right, we're running out of time, but I would quickly like to hear, from Doctor. Amongst all the programs, we know a lot of problems rather affecting this situation, and it is said that a problem known is half solved. And we all know the programs. We've mentioned insecurity and the exports and imports issues, and even electricity, issues on that matter. But then, what can be done, as a farmer when there is flooding? What can be done? The government is, the only thing the NEMA can tell you is avoid the land because there'll be flood in this area. So if a farmer loses his land, where else could he go? What can be done on that?
Well, if you talk about the issue of flooding, it is something that is a natural disaster that nobody can prevent it when it comes. But there is a need to intensify the effort from the government, especially. We have this NIMET that are providing the informations every year about what will happen or what is going to be done in what they have found. So actually, there is a need, as how I've said, for the government to intensify the effort in securing the farmers from falling into that kind of those problems. Last year, when there was a flood, there was a plan for the past government to provide the support to the farmers, which even if that support was provided to the farmers, it has already happened. But to do something that will prevent the farmers from falling into that kind of problems. So actually, there is a need for the government to do something in collaboration with the farmers.
Like giving them land?
Yes, of course. You see, like our farmers, what we are doing to them, always we are advocating to them on how to keep away from falling into that problems. They have to keep away from that areas that they know that maybe it is a lowland, maybe, or if there is this flooding, it will affect them to fall into problems. That is why they say that prevention is better than cure.
Indeed.
So actually, what needs to be done, there is a need for the government to intensify more efforts in that sector in collaboration with the farmers and the other agri-sectors to prevent all that occurrences, because of the prevention is better than cure.
That's true, Doctor. Thank you so much. Dr. Bello Abubakar, the president of the Maize Association of Nigeria.
I want to add something on what Mr. Paul said about the issue of private engagements in business sector, because we cannot rely always on government. We cannot rely, because as a farmer, it's a business that stands on its own. That's why we are trying to mobilize our farmers every day. Let them know that farming is a business, and it's a serious business, more than any other business, because if there is no food, nobody can survive. So what we are trying to do is to engage some other private partners, private sectors, to come to collaborate with them and to continue with our farming business. Especially this year, from our own associations, we have engaged so many input suppliers, service providers this year, together with some of our farmers, and they have provided inputs to them under some certain conditions and agreement that we have reached, so that they can go ahead to continue their production, providing food security and improving our economy. So I'm also calling to all other sectors to try to partner and engage some private sectors to continue with the farming activities, not to rely on government.
All right, gentlemen, thank you so much for coming on Daybreak this morning, and we hope in the not so distant future we'll be back here again to review some of the solutions that we proffered, and we'll review them with happiness and joy that they've begun, to yield fruition. Gentlemen, thank you so much for coming once again.
Thank you so very much.